But first, I'm John Bachman with this Newsmax Now update. President Obama will be arriving in Wales very soon for perhaps the most important NATO summit ever. We're just getting word ahead of that summit, though, that France has suspended plans to deliver a warship to Russia amid the tensions in Ukraine. Earlier today in Estonia, President Obama also promised Baltic states and NATO members that the U.S. would fully support them in the face of growing Russian aggression.
If in such a moment you ever ask again who will come to help, you'll know the answer. The NATO alliance, including the armed forces of the United States of America right here, present now.
Well, there was some confusion earlier today. Some reports suggested that Kiev and Moscow had reached a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire. However, officials for both countries are now saying that those reports may have been a little bit overblown. Russian President Vladimir Putin says that a deal to end the conflict in eastern Ukraine could be reached by the end of this week. Likewise, Ukrainian officials say both parties have, quote, reached a mutual understanding to facilitate the establishment of peace, thus no ceasefire just quite yet. Also earlier today, President Obama verified the authenticity of that ISIS video, which shows the second execution of an American journalist. Stephen Sotloff disappeared while reporting in Syria more than a year ago. The video released yesterday shows a man dressed in all black calling out President Obama directly by name right before executing Sotloff. The Islamic State terrorist also says other Westerners will die if the U.S. continues to bomb ISIS targets in Iraq. And British Prime Minister
This country will never give in to terrorism. Our opposition to ISIL will continue at home and abroad. It is important that we are clear about the nature of the threat we are facing. It makes no distinction between cultures, countries and religions.
ISIS has also threatened to kill a British citizen that was also included in that video yesterday. And the Ebola crisis in West Africa continues to spread, but hopes for recovery may be getting better for some. A third American missionary working in Liberia has been infected with the virus. He's currently being treated at an isolation unit in Monrovia. The man who you see right here is a British man. He was infected with the disease. He was released from a London hospital earlier today after making a full recovery. Also, the second American missionary worker flown back to the U.S. for treatment is now talking about her recovery. Nancy Wrightball thanked the doctors and nurses at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta and all the prayers she received for her recovery. We'll have more on that coming up a little later. And Halliburton, one of the companies involved in the 2010 Gulf oil spill, will pay $1.1 billion as part of a new settlement. 4 years after the disaster, BP and Halliburton continued to spar over who is responsible for that oil rig explosion. That disaster killed 11 workers and dumped millions of gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Halliburton was in charge of sealing the completed well with cement before it failed. BP has already paid $28 million in claims and could be subject to more penalties. The settlement would pay commercial fishermen and hunters who rely on the Gulf. It's still subject to approval. Another update in 30 minutes. Now back to Midpoint.